to be chatting. I mean, it's already 10:17, which is, wait, so you're on the East Coast, right?
I am on the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, 1:17 for me.
Okay, so it's 1:17. All right, so I mean, it doesn't look like we have anybody that's joining, but that could change. So I figure let's go ahead and get started. How's that sound?
Super. I'm ready for you.
All right, man. So this is, I told you, you and I have chatted before. For everyone that, is going to be watching this video later, Tony and I, full disclosure, are in a course together. We take an online course together, and, we just ended up chatting and becoming buddies. And, I just figured that he was a good person to have, in this group, just because he has a ton of insight. And he's got a really great background, and I think what's also great about him.
$100,000 a month. We're close to the $100,000.
Right there, we got somebody that joined. Is that? So just go ahead and announce yourself in the chat section, and then if you have any questions, you feel free to throw them in there as well. Okay. But this is Terrence. I'm with Food Tribe, and I was just introducing Tony and kind of how we met. So, the purpose of this group is to offer tips and tricks to restaurants and food and beverage professionals. But really, anybody that loves food and that loves business, because, Food Tribe is in the business of, helping our customers have better businesses, right? And so that is what Tony does. And, that's one of the reasons why I figured that you'd be a great person to have on our call today. So, that being said, Tony, I would love for you to maybe just give us some quick background on you and your background, and we can kind of just go from there if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. So hey everybody, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for the invite, Terrence. I really respect Terrence. He's a really great guy, and I love what he's doing in building the community of Food Tribe. So I'm thrilled to be here today to chat with you guys. So my background is an operational consultant. It's what I've done for about the last decade or so. And I've worked in a whole bunch of industries. I'm sure that Terrence and I will get into this just a little bit, but I actually grew up a little bit in the restaurant industry.
Oh yeah.
I also grew up, what did you say?
I said, oh yeah, we will.
I also grew up Italian. So, I also grew up in a culture that was, steeped in food being the center of everything. I would wake up and the first thought in my mind was what I was going to have for breakfast. And while I was eating breakfast, my family would talk about what we were going to eat for lunch and dinner. Right. And, where we were going to eat and all of those wonderful things. So restaurants and the food industry have a very special place in my heart.
That's awesome, man. So we're just real quick. I just want to, we are joined by Luis with Inca Media, excuse me. Luis is in Daytona Beach, Florida. So what's up, man? Nice to have you part of the crew today. But Tony, that's awesome. And I think that, that's probably why you and I are compadres, because that was my background. I mean, in high school and college, I worked, in restaurants, and my very first job was working the drive-thru at Taco Bell, right? So I love food, and so, yeah.
I'm sure that would be an incredible experience, getting to see all those people.
Well, yeah, it was. Well, you get to see another side of people, working the drive-thru at Taco Bell at 2:00 in the morning. But it was a lot of fun, and it was character building, right? And I think for me, and I'm sure that this applies to you, but I'll let you kind of elaborate on that. That was for sure, obviously, I didn't work at Taco Bell forever, right? So I ended up, doing my career, spending some time in startups and working in digital marketing space. But there was for sure, some lessons learned, from that experience that, I directly apply to, my business today, in terms of customer service and, how to manage people and how to, manage inventory and, all that kind of good stuff. Those are real, foundational business practices that, you get to learn at a very young age. Now, that being said, I'm lucky enough that I get to combine, my geekiness of, startups and tech and restaurants and kind of combine that with a love of food. I'm a foodie. I love to eat. And that's the great part about getting to work with my clients is they always want to feed me, right? Like they always want to feed me. So, I guess I'm just wondering, in terms of like your background in, the restaurant hospitality and food and beverage industry specifically, I mean, I would just love to hear, I guess, just some general thoughts on restaurants and operations and, why they're so important.
Yeah. Well, so I'll share just another piece of my background that'll help provide a little bit of context for that question,
Awesome.
or for the answer to that question, rather. So in the last for the last 4 years, my business partner and I, we've been running from Venture Greatly, as you see in the tag of this post, and we're an innovation consulting firm.
Okay.
And we pivoted a little bit from strictly the operational consulting, mostly because the trend that we were seeing, and I think that this absolutely applies to restaurants. I'm going to talk about that specifically in a second. But some of the trends that we were seeing is businesses were struggling to keep up with changing trends, changing times. And there are three factors primarily that we see this in. We see this in cultural trends. So the culture of, like the culture of what people want in their service providers, in their restaurants, in the companies that make products for them. We see this in economic changes. There are a whole bunch of markets, and this absolutely fits with restaurants.
Right.
Where as the economy shifts, that means that your business model is going to shift. And I can talk specifically about what some of our contacts and clients in the restaurant space have seen in terms of that. But rising food costs is in many parts of the country is a huge component of that. Yeah. And then we have the technological changes that happen, right? Those changes of how technology is shaping the way that we buy things, the way that we interact with each other. And so we saw this trend of many traditional businesses, and it's hard to get much more traditional than a restaurant, right? I mean, some archaeologists and anthropologists talk about restaurants being some of the first businesses that ever existed, because like people need to eat, right? That's like a universal, that's like one of the things that every human on the planet needs to do in one way or another. And so it's hard to get much more traditional than that. And the face of the restaurant world is changing just with, all those factors.
Right.
And so, specifically, some of those things that we're seeing, to answer your question more directly, we're seeing it being very hard to compete. And, we hear, I know that you guys talk about this, we see this. The statistics of restaurants failing is huge.
Right.
And at the same time, it's actually one of the most stable businesses once you get the business model right, for the exact same reason that I just said, because every human on the planet needs to eat.
Right.
And so once you can get that formula right and you're in the model that works, and what you guys do at Food Tribe is a really big part of that, helping people make sure that they can connect with their market and get some of the marketing side of that. That's a really big piece. And,
right.
I would say that that's matched with the operations part, right? If they can get those two things right, they're unstoppable.
Yeah.
If they can't get those two things right, or if they can't get those right in time before the cash runs out and before people's tolerance to, try something new, give them second chances runs out, well, then they're just another one of those stories, just another one of those restaurants that people don't remember 3 months after they close.
Wow. Tony, that was a great answer. Thank you for that. No, seriously, that was really comprehensive. And, I think I noticed during your response, I'm not sure if I gave you, really the opportunity to introduce Venture Greatly. So thank you for elaborating on you guys and what you guys do. Again, which is why I wanted you on the call, right? Is because you are an expert, and I think that people need to know about the way that you and your company are able to add value to them. If that's like a resource, well, I mean, I know you would be a great resource for them. That's just plain. That's what it is. It is what it is. Now, I'm taking notes during our conversation. I hope you don't mind. But, the three things that, kind of stuck out to me in terms of, your value proposition on, monitoring cultural trends and then monitoring market trends and then also like the technological trends. I think that that's great. And, that other portion, that second part where you're just talking about how fundamental the restaurant business is, really, like at the end of the day, it's about getting food into people's mouths, right? Like that's what a restaurant owner is looking to do. And even if you're a food brand, right? Like if you have like a beverage or, a CPG product, I mean, ultimately the idea is to manufacture the good and get it to someone's mouth, right? Now that process can go a couple of different ways, right? And it becomes, more or less challenging depending on, a variety of factors, like how big you are and who your customers are and, what your budget is, like all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, looking at, some of those other portions, like the cultural trends and the technological trends is super interesting to me, right? It's like, because, you're right. Restaurants go out of business very, very, very quickly, right? I mean, if they're not doing it right, I mean, you can get like an influx of cash, but your overhead is just outrageous, right? And I mean, I'm sure that you can kind of talk about this, based on your family background. But, I believe that they run on like, anywhere from like 10 to 30% margins. Would you say that that's like a fair number?
Yeah, that's that's healthy.
That's healthy.
If they go below 10%, that's the zone of death.
Okay. Right.
If you go below 10%, you're gonna be in trouble.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So anything, but I mean, anything over 30% is like, that's a solid restaurant business, would you say, right?
Huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
And I think that, in some markets, you're going to be hard pressed to do that.
Right.
It's really going to depend on, a bunch of, factors in terms of the geography, where you are, all of those things. And that's why I don't necessarily get too, deep into those metrics specifically.
Right.
As a percentage, in that's going to hinge on the market that you're in and where the cost of living is, because that's going to dictate what you can charge. It's also going to depend on what your business model is, right? So a food truck is going to have a very different business model than the fine dining steak restaurant.
Absolutely.
And one, a lot lower risk. The other, a much higher potential profit margin. It just depends on where you are, right? And the general economics curve, if you like those kind of graphs, right? Right. If somebody's just listening to the audio, they won't see me gesticulating wildly. But it comes from the Italian thing,
Okay, talking with your hands. I talk with my hands.
This is how I talk all the time. It's the only way I know how to talk.
It's like,
I don't have spaghetti in my hand. So when you look at the graph, some of those things are also true of a food truck is going to have a higher profit margin at those lower income ranges.
Right.
But they are going to be in a safer place in those lower income ranges, where a fine dining restaurant, steakhouse, fine dining French, something like that. They may have 5-figure a month rent costs easily if they're in even a second tier city.
Right.
And so if they're dealing with that sort of a thing, and they have a night where they only do 30 plates or something like that, that's they're not going to be profitable that night.
Absolutely.
And that's just the reality of the situation. If that's the model that they're in.
Yeah.
But because of the price, because of the average ticket for that kind of a restaurant, they're once they reach that critical mass, then they are going to be much more profitable, right?
Absolutely. Wow, that was a great response again. And I think that I think that's oftentimes what I've seen is that a lot of restaurant owners, they're so excited about that process of getting food into people's mouths that they don't really take the time to, develop a business plan. Right. And, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I am guilty of this myself. right? And I kind of grew up with a little bit of a different philosophy. I have a product development background. I took a course, and then I really geek out on like lean and agile, right? And so not sure if you're
my background is.
So all right, so are you familiar? So then all about the business model canvas.
Sure.
So that's how I got started, right?
Yeah.
And the business model canvas is a placeholder. It's a way to get started, but you definitely need a business plan. Just kind of sidebar for anybody. So go for it.
I was saying you need something, right? You need
exactly.
Like it could be as simple as the business model canvas, as you say, but you need something. You need something there written down, because if not, it's just in your head.
Exactly.
And our heads lie to us all the time. All the time. Right?
Yeah.
We're going to get more details of that in a bit. But you finish your thought. I interrupted you, man.
Oh, no, you're fine. Well, I was just, I think the part about what I was going to say is that, once you have your business plan locked down, if things aren't going well, like if you do kind of hit that death zone or whatever, if you did it right, you maybe have been able to, kind of bake in, a plan B or a plan C or, kind of a plan D. Right. One of the clients that I'm working with, one of the conversations that we've been having is about helping them. They've got this really comprehensive menu. It's got all these like really great fresh items, which is great, but there are some implications from like an inventory management standpoint, right? And managing, who takes care of that and vendors and all that good stuff. So we've been talking about helping them launch a pop-up series with a very limited menu, focused on a couple different locations, with a, kind of fixed, what is it, prefix menu?
Yeah. Yep,
yeah. I'm not French. Sorry. I don't. but yeah, and like, that's a way to kind of get creative and say, hey, like my business is working, or maybe it could be a little bit better. And so let me figure out other ways to generate income. I don't have to be locked into this brick and mortar location, right? There are other ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and here's one of the things that we're seeing. You talk about starting up, right? And I imagine I haven't been in the group for very long, but I was doing a little bit of research this morning. Reading some of that stuff since I joined, and so that I could just get a feel of the kinds of topics that you guys talk about. And it seems like you guys have a mix of some restaurants that are starting or that are in some of those early stages, those first couple of years. And then you have some, you have some restaurants that have been around a little bit longer,
Exactly.
But they might need to reboot some of their messaging, some of their marketing, some of those activities.
Exactly.
Here's the reality in the restaurant business, and this is true for most other industries. There are very few industries where this isn't true today in 2018. If you're not in the startup mentality, then you will go out of business.
Yep.
And the reason why that's true is because those three factors I can count, are changing at a staggering pace. The factors of, the economy, the economy's doing great right now, right? The economy's been booming. And then our president, we're not going to get into politics on this show, but we'll get into economic trends. Our president talks about, new tariffs. Well, like now the economy looks like it's surf season in, Laguna Beach, and things are up, they're down. I don't know where I don't know where it is any second, right? And that's not a commentary of anything that's unique about these times right now. This is just the state that we are living in. There are no more smooth lines anymore. When we look at culture. Beyonce and Jay-Z or, like Kanye release a new album, or they go on an interview show, and that's all anybody's talking about for the next week.
Right.
We're seeing these major cultural shifts. I just happened to list two of the artists that I just have seen recently. Really
but it's anecdotal and it's relevant. The way that they're able to, kind of hijack the system, that's a very different business model. I mean, the music industry is obviously different from the restaurant industry, but the same principles apply, right? You have to figure out a way to, take note of the way that your customers are consuming your content, your media, your product, and, figure out ways to differentiate yourself, right? and operationalize and blow it up and scale it out.
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately what everyone's looking to do.
Yeah. And, you know, I would actually kind of argue that the music industry and the restaurant industry actually aren't even that different.
Okay.
In that they're both in the pop culture industry.
Right.
And if you're not thinking of yourself as a restaurant owner, if you're not thinking of yourself as like you are either going to be on one side or the other of that equation. You are either going to be driving the culture in your area for your, you know, for your group of people, or you are going to be the victim of where the culture is going in your area. And the decision is entirely up to you. And that's why marketing is so important, right? And I actually think that's why the mix of marketing and operations, or I'm going to flip that and I'm going to say marketing and innovation are really important.
Right.
Because, you know, if you are innovating, if you are talking about, you know, those new things, if you're talking about, you know, how you want to move your craft forward, you know, like for some restaurants that might be, you know, weaving in more fusion, you know, dishes into the menu. You know, that's a trend. We're seeing that all over the place. People want new and different combinations in their food, and they want to taste things that are entirely new. That's one of the lagging indicators that we see with millennials dining out so much more. You know, our parents and our grandparents went out a fraction of the time that we are. And so they had a steak dinner with a really good steak sauce. They were like, this is amazing, right? And like we have well, I'm vegan at the moment, so I don't have steaks as often as I would like.
Yeah.
But for health reasons, we can talk about that more. I'm heartbroken. But you know, I have a steak, and it's like, this is the same old steak. You're like, I want something different. I want you know, like I want a foam on top. I want you know, a new gastrique. I want, you know, something new. And so you can either be responding to what your customers are demanding, or you can be driving the culture, and you can actually be giving them what they want before they even know how to ask it.
That's super important. And, you know, I kind of double down on, you know, restaurants and brand development. Obviously that's what Food Tribe is, you know, helping our customers do. But the idea is that your brand is able to outlive the times, right? You know, so if you have the ability to bake innovation into your brand, and, you know, those two things kind of fuel each other. So you're constantly like on the street and, you know, listening to your customers and having these conversations and, you know, then taking that data and that information, all that really rich information, and saying, hey, how can I make my restaurant, my service better?
Yeah.
Right. And there's like the total humility. It's not about doing it the old way or how we did it for the past 10 years or whatever. Then all of a sudden your brand is outliving the times, right? Like it's, I mean, you know, obviously McDonald's and, you know, the Burger Kings and, you know, some of those companies, you know, they've been able to last. But again, right, them transitioning into this kind of millennial generation has been a challenge for them, right? And they've had to really revisit themselves and say, well, who are we?
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, and I'll speak to that for a second. You know, here's a perfect example. It used to be that any good restaurant owner or executive chef or, you know, a leader in a restaurant would, you know, spend that time, a few targeted times throughout the, you know, service, whatever it is, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And they would go around to the tables, you know, and they would make the relationship. They would chat with the regulars. They would see what they liked, what they didn't like, what they were looking for. And then they would get that pulse of the market, right? Well, when you look at the way that things have gone, staffing, here's one of the trends for restaurants that I'm sure that you guys hear all the time. Staffing is absolutely a burden. And it's hard to keep staff. So the amount of time that an executive chef or that a business owner needs to be doing a line position and doesn't have the time to be on the floor is going to be a lot more than it used to be, right? And then we have new business models. Quick casual is a dominant business model right now in the restaurant industry, as is to go, and delivery models. And so in a delivery or a to go business model, the business owner doesn't have they don't have that same option to be having those conversations. And so the only way that they can have meaningful conversations is to get really good at the marketing, is to be good at the marketing, and not marketing as in one way, as in, oh, I took a picture of this and I shared it on Facebook. It's a model of, working with people who really know their stuff, like you, Terrence, and being able to use marketing in the way that it was meant, which is a two-way communication with your market.
Right.
And, listening as much as you're talking, and, sharing things and asking questions and, digging in and seeing what the trends are around you, that's marketing as it was meant. That's marketing at its best.
Yep. I agreed. Now, all right, I want to, man, we've just been kind of free flowing, which is
we can do this all day.
Yeah, I know. This is awesome. I wanna get us on track a little bit, just because I want to be respectful of your time, and make sure that we have some time to get some questions answered if there are any. But I think that you have given us a ton of great info. I would love to maybe just hear let me just kind of rehash, right? Like, so in your opinion, would you say that this is correct? Like, leveling up your restaurant operations really boils down to kind of those three market factors, right? The cultural trends, the market trends, and the technology trends. And so, making sure that you bake that innovation, that listening, that social listening into, those three things in order to make better business decisions or operations decisions for your restaurant or brand, correct?
I think that's completely correct, with one additional piece that I would add on there.
Okay.
I think the key is that you need to be watching those things.
Okay.
I think the broader solution, or what restaurant owners today need to do, is they, more so than ever, they need their business operations to work well, so that they can have the time to run their business and not just be working in their business.
Okay. Okay. And that's an important.
And so I think that the key there is not that they'll never be not working in the business, right? The restaurant industry is one of those classic ones where I don't know if I know any restaurant, restaurant owners. I'm thinking of some of the Food Network personalities. Like sometimes there are those kinds of personalities who may own a restaurant and they're not actually they're working in the restaurant, but in those cases, they always have a top-notch executive chef.
Totally.
Or, a top-notch manager that's there with them.
Yep.
And so some of the key is you need to get that balance. And it's really hard, right? Because in just about every other corporate industry, like you're talking about two different roles. You're talking about, the person that, picks up the mail is not the CEO in every business over $1 million a year, right? And so I was so excited, gesticulating, that I threw my pen across the room. I don't know if you guys heard that.
We're talking food. We talked about.
I can't help but get excited. So this is a really tough challenge, because for the vast majority of the time that a restaurant owner is, for the first, it may be 5 years before they're to a point where they can afford to, bring someone on that can work in the business, and they can separate themselves even half the time.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about, on a day-to-day basis, you have to have both roles in your head. You have to be executive chef, or you have to be restaurateur managing the front of the house, and you also have to be the CEO.
Yeah.
And that is not optional today, because the pace of change is so great.
Yep.
And so you have to be doing those two things. And that's why, you hinted at what some of the solution is before, of, having that plan. I don't like business plans as a personal preference. You need it if you want investment financing.
Okay.
But outside of investment financing, I actually hate business plans.
Okay.
And I love strategic plans.
Interesting.
And the reason why
what's a strategic plan, Tony? I've never heard of a strategic plan.
You're all good. So a strategic plan is going to be an outline of where the business is going. And so it's going to take everything from a vision. So there's going to be some overlap between this and a business plan, right? So there's going to be some, with a good business plan, you're going to have vision. And with a good strategic plan, you have to start with that vision. What is the vision of your space? What's the vision of the community that you're building, around your restaurant? All of those things. What's the vision of the food? What's the vision of the people's faces when they, when they take that first bite, right? That moment of truth.
Right.
When they have that, what do those things look like? You have to see that in your eye. And then a strategic plan is made up of all the steps that happen after that. So, where is, what are we going to change quarter to quarter? What are we going to change? And because, restaurants, especially, good restaurants that are using fresh ingredients, their menu is going to have to change seasonally, at least a little bit, right? And so at least their vendors, even if they want the menu to stay the same, some of the vendors that they may be using may have to change seasonally, especially to keep those costs low. You don't just want to use, the same old US foods for everything, because, like you're going to be paying, like you're going to be paying more, and, seasonally things are going to go in and out. So you're going to have to be looking at those things ahead of time, because if you're the one, like at the last minute, if you're making a, buying decision of, who your vendor is going to be for, weekend service, and you're buying those things on, Wednesday, and like you've done no research ahead of time, then you're going to be in a tough spot, right? You're going to be in a tough spot because you may not be able to source the stuff you need. You're also going to be in a tough spot because like you may have to pay higher prices. You may have to be left with lower quality, food.
Yep.
And so, like that's a concrete example, but this is true in all kinds of things. How long does it take to, print banners, to print, special cards, print table cards? How long does it take to do all these things? You need to be planning those ahead of time, which means that you have to separate yourself from working in the business so that you can free your mind and then say, okay, it's June now. In, what do I, 3 months from now is September. What do I want things to look like in my restaurant in September? And I think this is the biggest difference between a business plan and a strategic plan.
Okay.
The biggest difference is a business plan is a plan that you take to the bank or that you take to an investor, right? And so you say, this is how much money we're going to make when, provided that our assumptions hold true, right? I hate to break it to you, your assumptions are never going to hold true. Never, ever, ever.
Right.
And, sometimes they're higher. Sometimes people luck out and, they don't even know that they have as much demand as they do. And then the demand is, so much higher, and that's an amazing spot to be in. But a lot of other times the demand's a little bit lower, right? So for those of us that have worked in innovation, and, I got to be honest, my family business failing at such an early age in my formative, business years, absolutely educated, like that absolutely, pushed me to believe these things that I do.
That's awesome.
Knowing that that's going to fail, a strategic plan bakes that in. So a strategic plan, we say, hey, these are the activities that we want to work on throughout the next month, throughout the next week, the next month, the next quarter. But we leave open the possibility for anything to happen. And then we know that we're going to have monthly reviews, and we're going to have quarterly reviews, and we're going to come back to the table with our key people, and then we're going to see what happened. And because if we do those things, then we get to learn from the failure. And the failure isn't just throw away. The failure isn't just loss. The failure is lessons. And that's the amazing part, and why a strategic plan is so important.
Tony, so let me ask you.
I know that was a super long answer.
No, that was me personally, again, like as a startup founder, I have had a very difficult time completing my business plan. I would say I just haven't had the time, if I'm being perfectly honest. I am I learn by failure. Don't get me wrong. I truly believe in like strategic planning and, benchmarking and setting goals and all that good stuff. But to your point, right? Like it never goes the way that you think that it's going to go. So, for me, it almost seemed like a waste of time to do all of that homework and, groundwork. I don't know. Maybe that was just like my college. I definitely flunked my fair share of college classes. So, maybe that was just my poor homework ethic. But, one of the reasons why I was so attracted to product development was that it was all about just eliminating all the fluff, right? It was about like getting down to the core concepts, like who you are, what you're selling, why you're better, how you're going to sell it. And, and that was just so much clearer for me. And so, I see, kind of strategic planning is almost the next phase of business development, right? Where we talked about some of those restaurant brands that have had a difficult time adapting to today's market. Well, one might almost be able to argue that some of those old business practices are, going the same way, going the way of the dinosaur. And today's, technological, tongue twister, technologically driven, cultural driven, market, global market, focused economy is, starting to kind of new requirements, right?
Yeah.
So, before I have you hop in, I just question for you. So, like I know that you have some restaurant clients that you work with. I would love to hear, any examples that maybe you can kind of talk to where, you implemented or you recommended strategic planning as part of, an engagement with you and, what that looked like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the way that we work with all of our traditional business clients, restaurant industry and otherwise.
Okay.
And we've had restaurant industry clients, manufacturing clients, all kinds of, different, like more traditional business models, right?
Industry agnostic.
We are industry agnostic. And some of the reason why, and I think that this is actually one of the things that helps us actually serve our clients really well, is that we like to cross-pollinate those ideas. We like to take those ideas of what's working in the, you mentioned CPG, in those, like in those consumer packaged goods kind of an area, see what's working over there and then help apply that to, like maybe the corner, like quick casual place. And vice versa, because, all of those, this is one of the trends, one of the cultural trends that we're really seeing. And one of the I think that this really bleeds over into technology, is that we're seeing all of these barriers break down, right? So like we want the restaurants that we eat at to be part of the culture. Right. And that's why you see, that's why I made that point before. This is why you see a lot of restaurant brands partnering with, partnering with movies and, partnering with TV shows. And it's why, we can watch shows like, This Is Us, and they're eating at a, Panera Bread and
right.
Sorts of things, right? Because this is the, this is the barriers breaking down. And so the way that we work with all of our clients is to help the executive team, whatever that is. We're talking owners, we're talking leaders, those top level leaders and decision makers of the business, to help them. It really comes down to something that is this simple: to help them make more intentional decisions.
Yep.
And there's an Albert Einstein quote that I'm very fond of, and that is, you cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. And so what that means is, if we apply that directly to the restaurant industry, here's what that means. You cannot make a decision to change your business. You are not allowed. I'm forbidding you to right now to make a decision in the middle of dinner service on a Friday night. You're not allowed. And because you're going to experience problems then, and you need to decide what the solution is when there are not the 30 orders being fired, coming through the system. When you don't have a chef that's screaming at the sous chef, and a sous chef that's a little more naive and they're crying because they're being yelled at. Right. And when there's when you catch one of the wait staff, doing a line of Coke in the bathroom, and when does this sound like a scene that you may have seen?
Oh yeah.
And you are not allowed to make decisions then, because you will only make terrible decisions.
Right.
And so the thing that we help them do is to step out of that day-to-day so that they can make intentional decisions. They can create that strategic plan, and then they get to use that strategic plan. And, up there we have 5 levels that we help them get to. It's one of the reasons why we use the language level up, because at the bottom level is that ground level, right? And so, sometimes as a restaurateur, we're going to have to bus a table. We're going to have to work at the ground level.
Right.
And we can't have an ego about that, right? Because, the show must go on.
Right.
And then the next level up is that management level. That's that's like the daily, the weekly level of management. And then the next level up is the monthly planning level, where we have choices a month out. If you and I were having a conversation of, what do we want to be doing in July? I know when it is. If we want to talk about what we're doing in July, we have time to affect that, right? We can swap around resources. We can change what we're doing. And then the next level above that is that quarterly, that strategic level, that place where we're saying, hey, what does our next season's menu look like? what kind of community partnerships do we want so that we can, be more a part of our community? We can be more a part of the culture. I mean, what are some of those big things that realistically are going to take more than a month?
That's great.
And so that's why we need to be talking about them now. And then we have that yearly planning level where, we can really decide where things want to be, where we can say, hey, a year from now, I want to grow this restaurant so that I can take a day a week off and the restaurant will still run, right?
That's
That might be where some of your, people are, living, and they can have that a year from now, not a month from now, but they can have that a year from now.
That's awesome. Now, let me ask you, I'm going to press you a little bit because I would love to hear like a specific example. So this could be someone that you've worked with, or this could be, like just a market leader, like a brand that has done a great job. But, again, like there are those three forces that, restaurants are constantly having to, kind of compete against. And, I just want this to be highly valuable for our group members. That's why I want to press you on it. So like who has, or, who have you worked with, or who, again, who's a market leader, who's done a good job of kind of responding to those three market forces and being able to, level up their business operations and capture on, some sort of new success in today's age?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about a local quick casual restaurant.
Cool.
Lunch and, dinner service, cafeteria style. This happens to be a salad kind of a place. This is local for my market on the East Coast.
Okay.
One of their assets, and this is one of the things that you get to do in a strategic planning process, is you get to look at, okay, like what are our assets? Because to that point, we can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. And for all of us that have lived in that restaurant industry, we all know that feeling of having, dinner service. It's dark outside, it's rainy, and we're sitting there staring at the door wondering if anyone is alive and if they're walking in today.
Totally.
And some of the most successful restaurants have had that, right? But when we're looking at that, all we're thinking about is, oh my gosh, should I have snapped at that customer last week? What's wrong with me that's making this happen?
Right.
And so that's that level of consciousness. We have to step out of that and we have to look at our strengths.
Right.
And we have to look at what our goals are. What do we want? What are our strengths? What do we want? And those can be financial goals. Those can be lifestyle goals. Those can be impact goals. So we have to look at those two things. So when they looked at their strengths, we're talking about two different families. And both the husband and wife worked in the business. So right there, you have an automatic, huge benefit, right? Because you're talking about 4 executive leaders.
Right.
And not just people that are collecting a paycheck and then they're going home. Like you're talking about 4 leaders who, they have equity, they have a stake, they want to see this succeed.
Right.
So they took that and by looking at their strategic plan, they were able to strategically take 2 of those 4 family members out of the business so that they could plan and execute their second location. So a super simple kind of an example, right? But like you're talking about a model, it was very easy to do, quick casual, generally speaking. A lot of food prep happens in the back, and the food service out front is you just have to train the staff on what the model is, what the concept is, and so it was something that was very easily duplicatable. And so but if they didn't make that decision, it would be very hard to say, okay, we're going to slash 2 salaries. We're going to layer on, like 2 more people. And realistically, when the owners separate themselves, they have to hire 2.5 people for each one of them, right? That's generally what we see, depending on, how much work they're doing. And so that's a tough pill to swallow to be able to say that. But by looking at their strengths and their goals, we were able to, help them see that. I get to explain it now, in a 3-minute description. For them, it was around actually getting clear on those numbers, looking at that. And, before they really even could make that switch, they had to drive up, revenue from their first location. So they had more that they had to do, but it was by looking at that, that was a multi-year process. And so they got to drive up revenue. Okay, with that revenue, we can invest in more frontline staff. Okay, with that frontline staff, we can remove 2 owners and they get to build the next location. And, they got the investment, they got the investment funding because they had the proof of the first concept. So they built the second location 15 miles away in an even higher foot traffic area. And that's doing almost twice the revenue of the first location.
Wow, that's great, Tony. And I think that the thing that hit home most, at least for me, is that break down what you have, right? Like asset, like you might not think that you have very much. You might think that we all have something, right? You might be overworked and, only one cook or, an Instagram account with 15 people, but that is something, right? And that is a way for you to at least get started. And I think that in terms of, your example, that was super powerful just by, helping people to, again, just take a deep breath and say, hey, what do I want out of this? I chose to go into this business for a reason. So let me, figure out what I want from it, right? Like that's something that a lot of people don't do, which is, it can be difficult, but it should be easy, right?
Totally.
And then, taking inventory and saying, okay, well, this is what I have and what do I need in order to get there? And then all of a sudden you're achieving goals and you're opening new locations and customers are loving your food and they're talking about you on Yelp and your employees want to stick around and they want to become managers. And, all of a sudden things just start flowing really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great,
and I think one of the important things to, highlight is there was nothing magical about that example. There was nothing, they didn't have degrees in food service. I think one of them was an accountant. I think another one of them was a school teacher. There was nothing magical. They didn't have anything that you, listener of this right now, like there was nothing, remarkable about them. And that's a terrible way to talk about a client that I care about. But I think that the point is, if you think that it takes something special to do that, that's not true. And if you think that they wrote out their plan and then they just did it, that's not true either.
Yeah.
And, I love the example of of pilots when flying. If you ever look at the flight path that a plane takes from NYC to LA, if you look at that on the map, right? Or, some services when you go to, schedule the flight, they'll show you the little map with the line, right? Yeah. And so we think that there's just a straight line that they fly, right? But when you actually look at the flight line, they go this way a little bit, then they go this way a little bit, and then they go this way, and then they go this way, and they're always making subtle corrections.
Okay, interesting.
And because there are all kinds of factors, right? There's the wind that like blows them in one direction or another. Right. There's the air traffic controllers that say, hey, we have another plane on this flight path, so we need you to go further towards Chicago, and like make the arch up that way.
Okay.
And, all kinds of things like that. And I think one of those factors that happens is we get in our heads and really this is the crux of, what we do. And like we don't often like advertise this part because no one thinks that they have mindset problems. But everybody that's not reaching their goals, myself included, has mindset problems.
Oh.
And that's probably the most valuable thing that we do with our clients is that, and this is precisely why I don't like business plans, because a business plan, just like you said, your mind sabotages you from working on that because you say, I know it's not going to work out this way, so what's the point?
Right.
And so sometimes if we take that to its extreme, some people, when they see a business plan, they're like, I don't even want to do these things because I know it's not going to quite work out that way. So what's the point?
Right.
And the thing that's very different about a strategic plan and about someone that can actually hold your hand and coach you through that is that you have the power to fail, but to use your plan as guardrails so that you still get to hold on to something as you're going through that.
Yep.
And so that you still have that vision. If you totally bomb a quarter, if you try to do something, and I've seen this in, restaurants specifically where, they sign up for a service, right? Like a service that will help with like loyalty, like an app sort of a service, right? So they find they find a partner, they sign up with them, they find that it looked great to them, phenomenal, keynote presentation that they got to, watch, right? It all looked sexy. And then their like customers start to use the app and they're like, this is terrible. I'm just going to Chipotle. And so, there they spent like maybe $5,000-$10,000 getting all of these things done. They have a monthly commitment and a contract. They totally bombed that, quarterly objective.
Right.
And if they see that as a failure, then they're crashed, right? Then they're second guessing all their life decisions. But if they're looking at it appropriately as a strategic plan, they get to see that as an experiment. And like, just like no chef ever tries to, make a souffle for the first time and then is bummed when it falls straight out of the oven. It's the same exact thing here, right? We get to try that and say, you know what? It wasn't quite the right decision. Right. We needed some cream of tartar for those eggs. If my food science class is coming back.
That's right.
And so they get to see that, and then they get to make a tweak the next quarter because they have that guardrail to hold on to, and so they haven't just crashed and burned.
That's awesome, Tony. Man, this is a great call, man. I mean, all your responses were really rich and really great. If you got a couple minutes, I would love to maybe open up the floor for. I mean, Luis is on the line. Luis, if you wanted to, ask a question or two, if Tony's willing, I would definitely love to open up the floor to you for a bit. Let me go ahead, and I've got you on mute. Hey, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, man. Thanks for joining.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me. It's very interesting what he was talking about of not having a business plan. Because the majority of my clients, I used to be a server. My niche is just Mexican restaurants.
Okay.
And I used to be a server for a Mexican restaurant. So that's how I started. That's how I'm from Peru. I'm not from Mexico. I'm from still out of South America. So I know everything about Mexican food. And what always captivated me is just how these people open up Mexican restaurants without having a business plan. And he just hit the nail, because all these guys. I have one of my clients who's one of my biggest clients. He has like over 10 Mexican restaurants. He doesn't know how to write English very well. He doesn't know how to speak English very well. He speaks Spanish, but he doesn't know how to write. However, his experience in the Mexican field, in the Mexican restaurant, has given him a tremendously idea, and he has built this empire. Yeah. And when I start working with him, like, how do you do it? It's like, I don't know. It's just like, and he was honest with me. He opened up with me like, to tell you the truth, I never went to school for business. It just come naturally with me. I just see the places and everything, and I never written a business plan. He told me, and it's like, I just go to the places. I just have realtors that tell me, hey, this place might work. I just go and see the place. And sometimes I just driving around and see the places, and like, okay, this is the right place. This is the right place. And I'm open up a restaurant. And man, when he always opened up a restaurant, he blew it up.
They're successful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, man. I mean, Tony, I'll let you hop in. I've got a couple thoughts just based off of our conversation. But it starts with you, man. So you're the expert. So I would love for your thoughts on Luis, and how that example of not using a business plan, kind of was strategic planning, and then also taking note of cultural changes, taking note of technological changes, and then also market changes to again be successful.
I think that there's an amazing story in there that I just want to kind of highlight first, which is, here's someone doesn't know how to speak the English language very well. He can't write, he can't do all of those things, but yet he owns 10 restaurants. So he's grown his, concept to have 10 locations, and, that's amazing. And, I just want to sort of shine a light on, the fact that that's, I don't know him. I'd kind of like to meet him when I come out to the West Coast. Are you around LA as well, Luis?
No, I'm from Florida, Daytona Beach.
Oh yeah, right. You're from Florida. Well, I used to live in Florida, actually. If I'm your way, I'm going to find you guys so that I can meet this incredible guy. I'll have to brush up on my Spanish. I'll talk to our friend Danny before I go. I think the amazing thing of it is clearly he has his head screwed on right. And the thing that I mean, the thing that I mean by that though, is that's a perfect example of mindset. Here he has every reason to say, this isn't going to work and I'm going to fail. I don't know how to speak the language. I have all these reasons why I'm afraid. I don't, all of these things that he doesn't have a plan. But I think in fact, the very reason that he doesn't have the plan, he still has some kind of an idea of a plan in his head. I'm absolutely positive of it. And he just goes out and does it and shows up and doesn't take the setbacks as there's something wrong with me. He takes the setbacks, I'm sure, as, here's what I need to do. Okay, I'm learning something new. I'm going to go do something different. But I think as amazing as that example is, we don't all have that. And so for those of us who, might not have that level of confidence, that level of, mindset, that level of, whatever, I don't want to assume what he has, but, maybe it's a degree of spirituality that, helps kind of guide him. That can be a great mindset boom. But for all of us who might not have those things, we need something. We need to listen to content. We need to be members of the food tribe, right? We need to be doing these things so that we can have people that can help catch us when we fall, because that's inevitable. You don't go from 0 Mexican restaurants to 10 Mexican restaurants without falling a couple of times.
Yeah. And I think the only thing that I would add to that, Luis, is that, even the fact that he is someone that you consider to be a mentor and that, you have a relationship with is kind of a testament to, again, him having a plan, right? There's a very specific reason why he knows you and, what it is that you do. And the reason why you guys are having conversations on how to grow his business and your business and, kind of strategic. It's like, you guys are, it all boils down to, again, like you maintaining your vision and then you being open to the way that you're getting there, right? And having conversations. You never know the way that things are going to turn out, just based on being open and talking to people and figuring out, what it is that they want and what is it that they need. And that can be your customers, that can be your vendors, that can be your partners, that can be the whole gamut of people, right? It doesn't matter. So, I think that was a great example. I think specifically around, the kind of those cultural trends, right? Just like, making sure that, like, hey, Mexican food is huge. That is a huge market, and there are a ton of people that have, that eat Mexican food and, will continue to do it every day. And there's other people that have never tried it before, right? And so it's like, well, what do you need to do in order to get your food in front of those people or to get your customers coming back? And he did it 10 times over, right? So, again, it's possible. It's just all a matter of like, you maintaining that strategic planning and having that goal and then leveling up each time. Right. Yeah. So cool, man. Well, this is a great chat. I think that I've got a hard stop, so I need to hop off real quick. But, I do want people to, be able to, find you, Tony, and learn a little bit more about Venture Greatly and, how you might be able to help them in their business. So can you maybe just talk to us a little bit how to get in touch and, how to learn more?
For sure. Yeah, you can always follow us on Facebook. Our business page is Venture Greatly. You can also follow me personally, always there, always active, always happy to chat. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you prefer, although I've heard that a lot of restaurant people aren't on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So maybe not. Maybe just find us on Facebook. And, don't be a stranger. Feel free to, reach out, friend me, ask any questions. Always happy to help the food tribe and my man Terrence.
Awesome, brother. And for anybody that catches this video later, we're going to be posting it into our tips and tricks group for restaurant owners. I'm going to tag Tony in just kind of a rehash of our conversation. Tony, if you would be awesome and answer anybody's questions that maybe, kind of pop up in the comment section, we'd appreciate it. But, he's a member of the group too. So, definitely look to connect with them in the group. All right, guys.
It's great to see all of you. I'll see you, man.
All right, Luis. Thanks for joining. All right, Tony, take it easy, man. I'll catch you guys later.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye.